All right. Greetings, students, and I'm excited that you found your way to this presentation. I am Dr. April Cunyon. I am coming to you as a faculty member at Stark State College, but I want to say that the content that I'm going to cover here about psychology would really apply to any university. If you are interested in pursuing a psychology major at this next level of your career investment and you're planning to go to college and look into psychology. At one point, I do have a slide on here about Stark State specifically, but generally speaking, this information would apply. And I'm so excited to be able to do this with you in a virtual career fair format. We were really sad that we missed getting to see students on campus coming and talking with us about their potential options. And so it's neat to be able to do it in this format. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start by just talking about what are careers in psychology. And so this is just a small sampling of career fields that you might see in the field of psychology. Something that's really important in our field is that there are lots of different areas where you might specialize. So at the undergraduate level, so the next step for you, you would get a broad base of understanding in psychology. But then it's common once you have that bachelor's degree for individuals to choose to go on and try to pursue just a more invested interest for them. And that's where you see this break off of all of these different subfields in psychology as a discipline. So I'm just going to go through this list for a second so that you can get a taste for what psychology might look like in practice. So the top one, I think, is probably what most people think about when they think about majoring in psychology, or what does a psychologist do? And that is clinical or counseling forms of psychology. So here we're going to be working with mental health, having a client come in and working with them on where they are right now, what is the treatment plan, where would they like to go, those types of interventions. And while clinical and counseling psychology is really important, and we're seeing growth of job stability and needs in those fields as we see mental health needs continuing to progress. We also see all of these other ways in which someone might pursue a degree in psychology. So something like sports psychology, that's the next one. This was a new field in the not too distant future, or the not too distant past, I should say. And now we're seeing sports psychology really influencing not just the professional athletic associations, but also college athletics. It might be something that we would start to see even more at the high school level, for instance. So sports psychologists come alongside and work with athletes to try to help them to understand what mentally they're bringing into their athletic performance and how they might change that. And then industrial, organizational, or human factors psychologists. Those are different degrees, but they're in the same area. Someone who is in that domain, they're working with businesses. And so you might go into a business and work on how could we increase productivity in this business? How could we have better collegiality amongst the individuals that work in this setting? And so, that could be something like changing the type of office chair that everybody sits on, or it could be some type of interpersonal activity that you initiate in this organization. But those are the IO folks. And then the next bullet point I have there is forensic psychologists. Forensic psychologists work within the legal system. So they might be expert witnesses in a trial, or they may be evaluating whether or not someone is competent to stand trial. So some really interesting things there with forensic psychology. Forensic psychology is a little different than criminal psychology, which is that profiling career that you see on a lot of television shows. So you may have interest in criminal psychology as well. And so we've got these fields that are working a little bit more with incarcerated settings. And then you have educational and school psychologists. Educational and school psychologists work in the academic field. So they are with students and assessing students to see if there may be neurodevelopmental conditions that are impairing their ability to do school. So ADHD or learning disabilities, or any of these types of things that might keep you from being able to achieve in the classroom. And we can work on individualized education plans. What does that look like for this student? Other hands-on interventions in the school setting. Neuropsychology is, I always tell my students, this is like the focus of where we are right now in the field of psychology. So we ended up mapping out the human genome in the early 2000s. We finished that process. And so from that time, before that time, but certainly from that time, we see this devotion in psychology to better understanding genetics, how genes contribute to our behaviors, and then also the brain, really understanding the brain and neuropsychology and how the brain influences our behaviors. And so that is an area where we're seeing a lot of growth in terms of career options. Then you've got your research or your experimental psychologists, and research psychology is the scientific study of human behavior. So research underlies everything that we should be doing in this field and in our practice. And so you'll have psychologists focus exclusively on research. And then, of course, you could be a university professor. And a lot of us who teach at the university level, actually, that's it. We have a mix of some of these other subfields. So personally, for myself, I'm a clinical psychologist licensed here in the state of Ohio. But I also teach at Stark State. And so you'll see that intermingling. But certainly being able to teach other students is something that a number of psychologists might eventually do. And so when you talk about having a license or a certification, on that last board, and I'll go back to that for a second, on this last board we had all these different categories, but really when you're looking at licensure, only those individuals that are interacting regularly with the public and providing some kind of service to the public, those are the types of career fields in psychology that will eventually be licensed. So that may be a benefit for a number of you who would not like to pursue a career field where you would have to maintain an active license, because part of maintaining an active license is doing continuing education to keep that license active. So it might be actually really very promising to know that you could do a number of those different things without needing to hold a license. But for those of you who are interested in mental health as a future career, eventually you would complete your degree and then you would carry a license. And that's important to make sure that the person is competent to provide services, and also to make sure that you're staying abreast of all of the new ways in which we might intervene and treat individuals. So you see there like the State Board of Psychology, which manages clinical psychologists and also school and educational psychologists, and then also the Counseling Board, which takes over there for Ohio counselors, social workers, marriage and family therapists. And then I also just wanted to say on the other side here that at Stark State, this would fall under the social work degree rather than the psychology degree. But we also have licenses here in Ohio in the field of chemical dependency. And you can have different levels of chemical dependency license even with an associate's degree. So there would be a way to finish an early degree, move into a licensed occupation, which is going to give you more stability and higher pay as you continue to pursue other steps of your career. So that's actually really an interesting way to get licensed earlier. But then again, not all of these fields would require you to have a license. So when we talk about education, what would that look like for someone who's moving into psychology? Most of these degrees do require you to have what I would say is higher education, graduate education. So going first to get an associate's degree in psychology and then getting a bachelor's degree in psychology, those are still popular degrees. We're going to see a number of individuals who get a bachelor's degree in psychology, but then their career is not exactly as a psychologist. They're going to use those psychology skills in their business fields, in whatever areas where they're pursuing their eventual careers. And the bachelor's in psychology says, and I understand how to work with people. So we're all working with people regularly. So it's a marketable skill that way. But if you want to move into a career field that is specific to the field of psychology, you'll finish that bachelor's degree and then you'll go on and do some type of graduate education. That might be a master's degree, or it could be going all the way to the doctoral degree. And when we talk about with doctoral degrees, so those who have gone and had their they've completed what we would say the end degree within this field. The salary ranges that we want to look at are somewhere on average between $70,000 to $82,000 a year. It could be much more than that, and actually it is for those industrial organizational psychologists. They make the best money. It could be a little less than that. And so for some of you, that seems like, okay, that seems like a good career choice or option. For some of you, maybe that feels like, no, you know, I feel like I would want to make more money than that if I were continuing in the degree to that level. So I just want us to be very clear and consistent up front, because I think that it's really important that you have the correct information when you're making decisions about your future. So when I think about a day in the life for a psychologist, the thing that I think is most important is that it changes. And this is true. I have yet to have a psychology, I've kind of dabbled in some of these different career fields in psychology, and I've yet to enter into a specialized field where it wasn't something that just changed all the time on me. So I thrive on that. I love that. 2 days are never the same. But if that's not you, that would be interesting to know that as well. So I broke down here in clinical psychology, a day in the life would be, I'm going to come in and I'm going to have a whole new list of clients every day. So you're seeing clients with different psychological diagnoses who are dealing with lots of different problems. And my goals would be to diagnose them appropriately, to get them onto a correct treatment plan, to do psych assessment, so a lot of testing, maybe to consult with other professionals who are also treating this same patient. Maybe we'll do some case consultation. There's also an office component with that type of career. I need to be able to do record keeping and do my billing and deal with insurance companies. Industrial organizational psychologists who work with companies, this is the only other one, I promise. I just broke down 2 of these, but IO psychologists, they may go into a day and have a whole list of new activities and skills for that day, but they may do things like this, like lead trainings, host meetings with different members of the organization or different groups. They may do a lot of contacting with vendors who work with that business. Typically, they do a lot of assessment as well to understand what's working in this company, what needs to change. And they're being creative. They get the chance to create these new initiatives, ways in which we might do things differently that might improve morale and productivity in the job. So that's kind of I wanted to give you a day in the life. What does this look like? And at the same time, lead with that idea that psychologists probably are doing things that keep you on your toes. They keep you critically thinking. It's new activities each day. So is this the right field for me? And we've mentioned some of this on some of these other slides, but psychology is probably a good fit for you if you'd like to work with people. All of the fields in psychology are very socially driven. Even if you are more of a researcher, so that's going to be a position where you may not have a ton of direct interaction with the public. It's not a public-oriented, perhaps, part of this career field. You're still working with social issues and with things that impact people. So do you like to work with people? So good fit would be yes. Maybe not such a good fit if you're answering no to that question. Psychology is probably a good fit for you if you like to think deeply about things. So, you know, we already have a mound of research on attachment theory and why we're attached to people and how that works, but we need to dig deeper into that. Okay, so because of that, what does it mean when? X, Y, Z. And those are the types of research questions that we're constantly asking in psychology, and we're growing this discipline. So if you like those types of being analytical and thinking about things, this is probably a great field for you. And so right along with that, the next bullet point I have there is that you enjoy working with research. You like being guided by data and science. We want to stay focused on what the data is telling us. And so if that kind of thing is interesting for you, this is a fun field. It's an interesting field. On the other side, if it may not be such a great fit for you, if you don't want to go on and do all of the education. So the reality of it is that if I want to do the career in psychology, I'm going to need to be able to commit to the education that's going to get me there. So it's just an important practical piece of this as well. It's probably a good fit. Psychology would be a good fit if you would like the opportunity to specialize. This career field gives you the opportunity to have a good general base and then also to specialize on an area of focus that you are interested in. And it would give you the opportunity to work with individuals who are also interested, is what I want to say, in that field of study and in that specific field. So it kind of gives you the chance to do both things. And some career options are either general or specific, but they're not both. And we get that in psychology. But on the other hand, it's maybe not a great fit for you if you don't like that it's changing, if there's unknown demands that might come. I don't know what the next day is going to be like. Part of that general specific blend is that we have that variability each day. And then it's probably a good fit for you if you want good job security. We've got some really good promising leads in psychology, and especially as mental health continues to be more of a topic that we're aware of, and we continue to work away from the stigma that surrounds mental health. The career field looks good. But on the other side, maybe you do worry about the pay. Pay can vary depending on the state where you're at and the degree that you have. So particularly for those without graduate degrees, we're going to see less pay in this field. And you'll want to look at that. Is this a good fit for me? What do I think about those salary options? So here's my why Stark State. So I mentioned a minute ago that I do have a slide on here about Stark State. So of course, I want you to end up at the college that you dream of going to and have the opportunity to work with faculty members that you think that you would really connect with. And especially when we get even to the bachelor's level, for those of you going on, get a chance to really work on some research with those faculty members. So at Stark State, we do the 2-year degree. We do the associate's degree. So coming out of high school, you would do the first 2 years. What's really great about that is, for one, it's less expensive. So we don't have an option to stay on campus. We don't have dormitories or things of that nature. So everyone is commuting in. So there's a big community that way, in the sense that we all know that we're commuting in. So students like bond over that piece. But what's really nice about that as well is that you're not paying the price tag on room and board and paying for all of that extra that gets wrapped into the college experience. And then tuition per hour is actually lower than it's going to be at a 4-year institution. So you get the chance to do those first 2 years at Stark State, pay less for the degree, and then we have transfer agreements with all of the state schools in Ohio. So you go to Stark State, you get your associate's degree, and then all of those classes are going to transfer over, and then I can finish my career at any school that I want to. So say I want to go to Kent State, or I want to go to the University of Akron, or maybe you want to go to Ohio State, any of these schools. Maybe it's even a school that's out of state. But let's say I would transfer to one of those schools here in the state of Ohio. I would already have my associate's degree. I would have paid a fraction of the cost of what it would have cost me to do those 2 years at Ohio State, but I still get to go to Ohio State for my final 2 years. I'll graduate with my bachelor's degree there, and it's only ever going to say that I have the bachelor's degree that the person next to me received, and they did all 4 of their years at the Ohio State campus. So the expense, the ability to transfer, also the class size, I think that it's a good transition from high school to come to Stark State, because we cap certainly the most full of a class that you would have is 30 students. So it's going to feel very similar to your environment in high school, instead of this lecture hall of 300, 400 students. And it gives you a chance to get to know your classmates. It gives you a chance to get to know your faculty and really to engage this material. And again, we're doing the first 2 years. So we're doing like the general psychology, the human development class. We're doing these courses that are your entry point courses in the field of psychology. And then when you go and transfer to the other institution, you'll get a chance to do more of the specialized topics and courses there. And at that point, because they're specialized, you'll still get those small class feel rather than that intro level gen psych large lecture hall feel. Specifically to psychology, I think that Stark State brings 2 important things to the table. The first is Psi Beta. Psi Beta is a National Honors Society organization in psychology. Most community colleges do not have this, and it is a really nice way for us to be able to highlight students that are high academic achievers, to get students, those students that want to be in Psi Beta, get a chance to do more research with us. And we do service projects on campus, and we get to go and do things in the community that relate to psychology. So that's really fun. And then also I have on here Psych Methods. Our capstone class at Stark State is psychological methods. And in this course, you will actually do your own research project. And so we find that students that leave Stark State and go to another university to complete their bachelor's degrees, we feel like they're beyond prepared for what is coming next, because they have this opportunity to start from scratch and do an entire research project and present that, which you'll present it to the community there at Stark State. You get the chance to be a part of a poster presentation, but it's really fantastic. I don't know many community colleges that have this experience, and if I'm honest, I previously worked in a bachelor's level school where we were awarding bachelor's degrees. We had students do this work in 2 separate classes. They would start in a research methods class, they would finish in a data analysis class. Even then, it wasn't as advanced as what we do here at Stark State. So, and they were getting that experience in their 4 years versus in 2. So I think that psychological methods is a really great perk for the Stark State program. So what's next for you? If this has piqued your interest in psychology, I'm excited about that. I love the field of psychology. As a student myself, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I just knew that this was where I needed to be because it's what really was interesting to me. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to pursue psychology, like continue to look into that. What would this degree field look like? What would, different research subjects even look like? Read about psych research. I would encourage all of that. In terms of our particular program, I have contacts listed here. I put my own information at the bottom, but in the psychology department, our coordinator is Dr. Nicole Cleland, and so there is her information. Also, I am in the Department of Education and Social Sciences, and so I've also included contact information here. If you are a student who would like to know more about sociology or about education at Stark State, who to contact, who to connect with, and these professionals are extremely open to wanting to connect with you. So don't be hesitant to do that if you have questions or interests. And then also with this, I will send out the curriculum sheets for all 3 of those programs actually. And on the curriculum sheet, you'll see like these are the classes that you would take to achieve your associate's degree at Stark if this is something that seems interesting for you. But if you want to connect with me and ask me questions about psychology that have nothing to do with Stark State, they're just questions that you have about psychology, I encourage that as well. Please just let me know. Okay, thanks so much, guys. I hope that you are able to find a career field out of these presentations that's really interesting for you.